rock and roll. We got four already, and now they're steady. That's a Led Zeppelin song. So they mumble something at the beginning, and then it goes the ocean, the ocean. I love that song.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Zeppelin.
Good man. So who are you? How do you want to introduce yourself to YouTube, to my audience?
To your audience, I guess Aaron. That's I like that. It's first name. It's legit. I like that. It works just fine.
Okay. It's a consultation of sorts. I'm going to have a series of questions for you to sort of gauge where you're at,
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
find out if you're crazy. Um, by all means, you can interrupt me and you can ask questions or give me any sort of feedback as you see fit during this conversation.
Sounds good.
Aaron, are you preparing for a specific disaster?
No, no, I can't say that I am. Uh, the whole zombies are coming, nuclear warfare. I mean, I think you said it best. Anything is plausible, but the probabilities are pretty slim
Mm-hmm.
as far as that goes. So,
Okay. Why do you prepare?
well, well, for the definition of the meaning of it being prepared itself, I think prepper, uh, doomsday prepper, or any kind of prepper has a really negative connotation to it. Just due to the fact that a lot of people think of the crazy guy with a stockpile of guns and ammo, or 5,000 gallons of water in the basement. No, I mean, you should be prepared as something as simple as, did you make sure to bring a toque with you? I mean, obviously I'm Canadian, you can tell, but if you're driving longer than 10 minutes on the highway at minus 40 Celsius, I'd certainly hope you got a good pair of mitts and a toque.
That's actually kind of funny.
You
A
know,
buddy of mine was talking about that in events a year or so ago. There's a lot of people that are into this that don't think of the basics. I think the common blackout or the breakdown at the side of the road, or the kitchen fire in terms of the basics, in terms of minor disasters that we're more likely to encounter, I think, as
yeah,
opposed to, an electromagnetic pulse or a viral pandemic, which are plausible, but probably not as plausible as, blackouts. How long have you been doing this for?
not that long actually. Like, I mean, I'd like to think that unlike most people my generation or age, I'm early 30s.
Okay.
Uh, I was raised fairly in a fairly sane home, and I was taught to be prepared for not everything. I mean, not a nuclear holocaust, but I mean, make sure that you're dressed properly when you're going out in the elements. Uh, Make sure you got a fire extinguisher in your house. Simple things like that. Make sure that you're aware of your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
Do a little research before you go out into the wilderness. So,
What do you think? What do you think you're lacking right now? If there is a specific area or a specific concern on your part where, compared to some general, the whole scope, some people are. I see this with a lot of ex-military guys. They're very pro-security. There's nothing wrong with that, but they tend to overemphasize into the security components, often neglecting other aspects such as proper food preservation. But the same sort of thing I see with nurses and doctors, where there's a lot of emphasis from a healthcare perspective, and they lack in other areas. Do you think you're lacking in an area specific that you would like to focus on more in terms of your preparedness from a whole gambit?
uh, I would definitely like to work more on learning about not really. I don't really want to call it botany, but local plants
Mm-hmm.
in my area, my province, if not this continent. I mean, that's a lot to absorb and try and retain, but bushcraft, I was lucky at a young age. I was instilled, like, I know how to make a fire with just my hands.
Awesome.
Not not too many people can say that, but
Yeah, that's true.
that's learning. My grandmother and grandfather, they were pretty bushcrafty. They had no choice. So my grandmother knew a lot about plants, what you could eat, what you couldn't. That's definitely something I'd like to learn a lot more. That's definitely a weakness in my portfolio, so to speak.
Hmm.
Uh, Security, that's definitely not too worried about security.
Okay.
I'll put it that way. I'm a proud Canadian. We'll put it that way.
Hmm.
Proud gun owner. And
Excellent.
training obviously needs to go with that. I'd like to think that goes without saying, but unfortunately, it does need to be said. Is that just going to the store and buying a bunch of guns? No, you need to know how to use them. You need to not only know how to use them, but train with them on a regular basis, which isn't cheap.
Sure, it's not. I mean, it just like other skills as well. Knots, hitches, as an example, are just perishable, lack of a better term, unless you. My buddy Phil says this all the time. If you don't use it, you lose it. His mentality. So obviously, where firearms are concerned, any number of skills. I think it's funny that you touched on food. I was talking with a girl the other day. I might actually text her if you don't mind, and like give her a live shout out. I think it would be pretty cool. If that's cool with you.
Oh, all good, all good.
See if she responds. And I was chatting with her. I'll do this really quick. No autocorrect. The whole everybody's waiting for me to text here. Thanks, buddy. My point with her was I have a lot of confidence in people, in somebody like yourself. Do the fire. I'm sure you can build a shelter. I'm sure you can purify, filter water. Food is the huge wild card that a lot of people, I think, prepared as individuals, they underestimate. And like with a recent video I did on the Bug Out Bag series talking about fire, I'm a huge advocate of my own philosophy in terms of going back in time to embracing a primitive bushcraft perspective for the purpose of having that knowledge. You're not going to go out to the woods and make a friction fire by hand if it's an emergency situation.
Mm,
However,
probably not. No.
probably not, but it's very good that you have that knowledge because should something happen with your existing modern day supplies, then you have that knowledge to go back with. A lot of that edible identification is a really big thing for me personally. And what I'll do for you specifically is I'll let you in on the little secrets. I'm actually developing something that'll be launching in the spring. I'll send you a couple screenshots of it, which is specific to wild edible identification in terms of retaining the knowledge. I can't give too much away. It's going to be a big thing. I've talked to other couple YouTube channels about promoting it and going to Kickstarter, and it's going to be this awesome, awesome thing. So I'd be happy to have you take you on just personally as a beta tester to try it out.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be very interested in that.
Yeah, but it's such a huge thing. Food is. I think a lot of people underestimate it. I mean, when I was flown out to New York last year alone as 20 of potential candidates for a show, I did a lot of research on West Coast survival specific to food acquisition because I knew the majority of the reasons why people would leave such a survival show, if you can kind of hear what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is it was either going to be psychological or food acquisition. People could starve. So, okay, that was my ramble. Please continue. Please continue. I got more questions for you. What are your preparedness goals, Mr. McClure?
Oh, Yeah, I don't know. I've taken it pretty lightly. Well, not I've taken it lightly, but I've taken it. I haven't gone overly aggressive with any kind of ridiculous preps. I've just tried to keep on top of the basics, which I think a lot of people skip.
Hmm.
Uh, Definitely like water. I mean, no, I don't have 2,000 gallons sitting in my basement.
Sure.
Do I have enough? Do I have enough water for myself and my significant other for a week or two? Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And the funny thing is, actually, where we're at, there's a lot of new construction going on, so the water has gone out quite a few times for more than just a day or two. So upwards of like 4 or 5 days at a time, where yeah, we had water, but it wasn't potable water by any stretch. I mean, probably was, but we didn't want to take any chances. Which was a nice little, it was a learning lesson and a nice little way to test what I had
Hmm.
developed already. So that would be good. Food, yeah, we if we really had to, I could stop going to the grocery store for probably a month if I really had to,
Yeah.
and still eat half decently healthy. Um,
Let me pause you on water for a second because I think as Canadians, Canadian brother, as Canadians, I think we are uh, we've got this huge advantage because water is like fucking everywhere around us from a natural resource perspective. I mean, I'm speaking with one girl in California, and like that was the big elephant in the room was what are you doing for water? And she actually impressed me with how much she had stored up. But you know, the reality is, me personally, I'm very close to creeks and streams and things like that. And yourself, I mean, how close is the nearest stream to you, or creek or water source, natural water source? Would you say?
the absolute closest one would probably be within, if you had to, walking distance, probably 5 kilometers.
Okay.
Uh, Larger streams, we're talking. I mean, keep in mind you probably need a vehicle, but even if you didn't have a vehicle, I've got the North Saskatchewan about 25 kilometers north, and I have the South Saskatchewan about 30 kilometers south of me.
Yeah.
So that's those are two huge bodies of water. If anything really bad happened, I'd be more concerned with the contamination of those bodies.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's something else that people have to deal with, knowing about how to properly filter water. And
The chemicals specifically are sort of the wild card for water filtration is concerned because you know we really don't know how to effectively move uh, mystery chemical X. I mean, when I researched this, I did a presentation on it a couple of years ago. I mean, distillation, as an example, to purify water, what could happen is if it's chemical X, whatever the chemical may be, may inadvertently distill at a lower temperature as opposed to the water. So you could be extracting all the chemicals into your clean container, as an example. So my advice for contaminated water is concerned is there's too much risk. Unless you know the specific chemical that's in the water and know how to effectively remove it. But if we're talking about, Giardia, Pictosporidium, or different types of protozoa, which are generally very much bigger, 50 microns, and you have bacteria, a little bit smaller, zero point 0.2 microns, we effectively filter it, and then viruses at 0.004 microscopic. Filter, boil. I mean, there's ultraviolet light, there's distillation, there's solar distillation, there's all these different methods. But I mean, for the audience watching this, if you're not getting your water from the garbage dumpster of a chemical plants or something like that, you have a lot of confidence that it's not contaminated. Filtering and boiling, that's it. You're done. You're good. It's good to drink.
usually for the most part, like, I mean, that's all you're going to be able to with major system crash or anything like that. I mean, as far as I know or I can tell, if it's anything that bad that you can't tell by smell or sight or I guess even touch in the water from a live stream,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you're probably not going to be able to stop it anyway. Uh,
Sure.
I know that sucks to hear, but I mean, in reality, if you're set up so good to the point where if your stream is say polluted with let's say some radiation, Or, for instance, heavy metal pollutants. For instance, North Saskatchewan, right close to where I'm at, they had one of the Husky oil factories had a spill. The lines leaked right into the body of water. I mean, that one you're going to be able to tell by looking at it. But there is also clear, scentless, heavy metal chemicals that they use. If that ever went to the water, you're not going to be able to filter it. You're not going to see it. You're not going to smell it. So, yeah, at that point, I don't know what you would do. I just hope that you're not, not drinking out anything like that.
And there's a gentleman named Angry Prepper I've had some chats with. He mentioned that with respect to the canning, pressure canning process, that it can be, tasteless, odorless sort of thing. There's actually specific bacteria, botulism, in which it thrives in a pressure canning environment. This isn't for you, Aaron, but I got a text here from Christy, so I just wanted to give her a quick shout out if you don't mind.
Oh, you go right ahead.
Really quick. Hello, Christy. Hello. Good evening. Thank you for watching. Well, my thought process is like way off now. What were we talking about? Water. Radiation, actually. I'm not. I'm thinking that radiation, contaminated water with respect to radiation. I'm not too knowledgeable in the aspects of where nuclear fallout in the water, how water could be affected. So I've been meaning to get in touch with Bruce Beach. He was on season 1 of Doomsday Preppers. He's a buddy of mine. He's the guy with the 42 school buses, the bunker underground. And he's a retired radiologist, a scientist, and he seems to have a lot of information about that. I think, too, I mean, somebody like myself who's got some preps and I do this sort of thing, nobody has all the answers for everything, I think. I sure don't. So I guess what I'm trying to say with that is it's really a constant learning game. I mean, I was talking to Christy the other day about bushcraft and getting out into the forest and working on those skills. I mean, the specific example I used was you could spend your fucking life just studying mushroom identification and their uses. You could get your PhD just working in that one specific realm of knowledge compared to the vast majority of information itself. I'd like to kind of zero in on some core concepts with you to find out where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are.
Sure, yeah.
Individuals. So we'll start with water since we're talking about it. I mean, we've got some stores 5 kilometers from a water source. What do you have in place right now if you needed to get that water source? Do you have a vehicle? Do you have containers? Do you have a wheelbarrow? I'm thinking more long-term.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to be in a house with a decent-sized yard. Vehicles, yes. For a profession, I'm a mechanic by trade.
Oh, really? Beautiful.
So
excellent stuff.
That's why I liked your video about the
top 10. Top 10, and it would be right. I mean, I'm sure everybody's got their own opinion about it, but for me, things are breaking down a bit here. Mechanic is in the top 10, brother. So that's awesome. Do you work with diesel vehicles
all the time? So
okay.
That's why I loved your Volkswagen video there. The oil fryer car.
Oh,
so
it's like it looks like shit. It looks it's almost 30 years old. People see me driving it. I actually had to get it towed because the clutch went some time ago, and I'm in the tow truck, right? And some other tow truck driver, he doesn't know my tow truck driver. He's like, roll down the window, and he's like, take it to the scrap yard. Why would you say that? But people don't appreciate this magical machine that I have, which is basically able to run off of used veg. So yeah, as a mechanic, I'm sure you'd appreciate that. I actually got it. Well, I got to get some check valves because I'm finding that for the return line is seeping into the system, and so as a mechanic, you know what I'm talking about there. But otherwise, she runs great, man. It's awesome. It's awesome. Um, Sorry, we're getting off track here. This is fun just shooting shit. I think some people would like to see that too.
Well, it's probably a nice little different perspective. It's somebody who's like, I mean, I'm definitely not super experienced. Like I said, I've probably only been into it for the last 6 months, a year maybe.
Okay.
I've had a lot of the lifestyle and habits and skill sets taught to me younger without even knowing it or getting specifically into being a prepper. Mine, and again, I don't even know if I would consider myself a prepper. I'd like to just consider myself a smart human being for
Yes.
making sure that I'm not going to get stranded, hurt, or I know what to do in a basic situation like that. It's something very small. A prime example, Christmas time. I'm with the in-laws. We're opening up presents. Well, everyone is very, very skilled at taping up those presents. It was one of those communal gift exchange kind of deals, right? And first present goes by, and one of the aunts couldn't get into it. Well, I've always got a pocket knife with me, so I pulled out my pocket knife and went, "Here you go." And she's like, looked at me with big eyes, and one of my wife's cousins looked over. She's like, "Oh my God, you had that with you the whole time?" I went, "Yeah." So, but because of that,
And that's a lot. That's a like one of the most common things. Is just a little simple pocket knife.
you'd think so, but you'd be surprised how many people nowadays don't. Something like that. Unfortunately, I still am a dirty smoker. That's my last vice I have left.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, be getting rid of that pretty soon. That's so. I mean, I always have a lighter on me for the most part. Uh, those little things, pad and paper, a pen and paper in the
Mm-hmm.
car. Make sure you have that source of fire. Uh, my wife in her car, I made her a bug out bag. I'm doing
Okay.
hand quotes here for that.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a bug out bag, but we're in Saskatchewan, central Saskatchewan. It gets cold, very cold. So and she drives. She drives probably about 25 kilometers to and from, well, to work and then another 25 back on the highway, middle of nowhere. So she's got food in there. She has the ability to make fire easy and the hard way. Extra clothing,
Cool.
shovel, extra batteries for the cell phone, like a cell phone booster. I can't, like everything you can think of. I made sure it was light enough though that she had to take it, she can take it and go. It's not like a 50-pound pack. It's probably 20. I mean, which is pretty stout. I mean, it's not. I mean, you've done hiking. 20
Sure.
pounds on your back is that gets heavy after a while, but
Sure does.
it's
It does.
there is enough in there that I am more than confident she would be fine. If she hit the ditch, she could get out. Like, I mean, it's first aid kits, you name it. There's source of water in there, lights, a couple of double, triple redundancies, but it's not ridiculous. But it's enough. I think anyway. I hope.
We talk. It sounds like you've got it covered. I mean, there's a lot of kits online, a lot of blogs, a lot of things that with your survival kit. You get your wool blankets, you get your candles, space blankets, spare batteries, all that sort of stuff. So, I, based on how you're telling me that, I think I've got a lot of confidence with respect to what you have set aside for her, which is a good thing to do. And it it's funny because people look at us like we're fucking aliens being under preparedness, and it's just logical, smart, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, my answer is yes, you are a prepper if you are thinking of things like that. The unfortunate reality is we're often perceived with these very negative stereotypes. So sitting in the bunker, calling a shotgun, talking anti-government, and that's just like a media. It's all drama, right? A lot of these shows and whatnot. So, I mean, thinking ahead through the more realistic or small-scale disasters is smart. And I, like I said initially, I don't think a lot of preparedness individuals think about that. Shit, change their 9-volt battery on their smoke detector. having carbon monoxide detector, changing the battery on that. I mean, they're very subtle, yet more likely and realistic scenarios that we can come across.
Yeah.
So, where water's concerned, I mean, you've set up a tripod, done, you know, basic filtration, I'm assuming.
Yes. I've also got, like, I mean, I have your generic store-bought crap, like, I shouldn't call it crap, but your Life straws,
Okay.
tablets, powders, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with a life straw. I mean, like, I think I've got one, like, sitting right there. I've got mine. I've got the ultraviolet as well. Yeah, that's all good stuff. Now, where where food is concerned, how confident are you? Said you got about a month. And we could break this down the same way as fire, like I did with the bug out bags. We can break it down to a primitive skills of bushcraft perspective, which would include identification of wild animals. It could include fishing, hunting, setting up snares, catch deer, things of that nature. Food acquisition in a long survival situation in the forest. Modern day, which could include nuclear pressure canning, dehydrated goods, or store-bought stuff. I'm sure you've got probably some freeze-dried dehydrated goods and buckets and other things of that nature. I'm guessing.
Yeah. Food acquisition, I'll be honest, snares. I
Mm-hmm.
remember from when I was a kid, but I could definitely use a brush-up course on that, that's for sure. Hunting, as far as hunting with a gun or a bow, yeah. Yeah, I'm more than confident because I know because I do that every year.
Beautiful.
But
What do you go for? Deer?
usually deer, moose. I do like my bird meats though.
Mm-hmm. Grouse?
Uh, well, usually goose.
Okay.
So
Okay.
or duck.
Duck? All right.
I've got no problem with upland game. Uh, Other than that, like I mean, well, if you've ever had squirrel, it's not that bad.
Okay. Actually, that's, I've had frogs' legs, worms, mice, uh, raccoon. The squirrel's actually the one that I haven't had. Now, if if you get a deer or a moose, and you're good for a long time. And that's a big chunk of meat. It's a very good chunk of meat. You and your significant other. So, how would you preserve this? Let's pretend there's no power. You got a moose. And if you hunt, I hunt. It's that's cool, man. It's in your blood. Another excellent skill. Excellent skill to have. Um, let's put out a hypothetical situation. You've got your month's supply. You went through the food. You need food. And I said,
Preservation, yeah. As far as preservation goes, I mean, I would probably be good for the 6 months, 5 to 6 months, or 5 to 7 months of the year where it's a deep freeze outside.
mm-hmm. Oh, that's an
Where
excellent point. Yes.
where as far as the spring, like the warmer months go, especially summer, it gets just as hot here as it does in the Midwest of the U.S. I I'd have to be honest that I haven't. Canning would be the closest thing I could get to preserving it, and other than that, I think it would.
We'd be screwed.
The reality, well, no, the reality is there would be waste.
Well, we got to change that, don't we?
Yeah,
So first and foremost, there are reusable canning. Once you pressure can, you can't reuse the lid. I know that there's a company that makes reusable pressure can lids. So yeah, to get into that, and a buddy of mine, John, who's probably going to watch this at some point. So hello, John. We're going to do like a hands-on demo of pressure canning, step by step, and he's complete novice at it. So my intention is to have him encourage questions from a beginner standpoint to sort of complement the audience that's watching it. So if you can pressure can, it's great. And it is possible to pressure can over a wood stove. I've done it, so like hence no electricity. It's very tricky. You got to get it hot as hell, but it does work. So what I'd recommend you do is get salt. Salting's one primitive way that you preserve the meats. And basically, what it does to the meat is it goes like this. It inhibits the growth of bacteria. There's four factors that affect food preservation: thicker moisture, humidity, temperature, light, oxygen. If you can remove or control those factors, you can sustain food for a longer time. So, in the unlikely event that you have to hunt, and if you've gone for deer and bear, that's excellent. Salting and drying over a fire is one thing that you could do. I had a nice young lady out in, I want to say Alberta. I did a chat with her the other day. Nice one. And she was saying, Jay, you're going to do more of the primitive stuff where food preservation is concerned. And I'm sure there are some videos out there, but maybe people want to see my flair to it, I guess. So what I might do is smoking is another way to do it. Just basically make a huge enclosed shelter so the smoke can't get out. You put your bars across, and you chop up your meat. Smaller the better. You hang it, you dry it. But I can get into that. So there's obviously an area that you can
definitely
focus on, because back full circle, food is critical, buddy. Food is critical. And it would be a shame to see it go to waste.
Well, and that's the thing that I find that I take for granted. I've got a smoker, but it's electric. So the second electricity's out of the picture, you don't really think to yourself, well, yeah, you can still smoke meat. Mm-hmm. So that's something I should almost start practicing in the backyard, because I'm lucky enough that I have the space. So
I'm sure, you know what? There's probably a ton of different videos of primitive skills guys doing that. We got cedar where you are, right? Just make your one enclosure and cover it all up with some cedar branches or whatever the case is, and a nice big fire going, and then make it a little bit hunky, a little bit smoky, and that's it. I mean, it's a lot of the primitive bushcraft ways of conservation. I guess we've graduated. So drying, sun drying, became dehydrated. You know what I mean? So if you've been an electric smoker, basically they're just trying to be more efficient using technology with respect to means to smoking from the traditional way. So it's all sort of the same stuff, and it all works. You can smoke meat, you can rub salt into meat and put it out in the sun and dry it out. So if you don't have salt, put that on your list, because if you're a hunter, you're probably going to get some good. You can do it with fish as well, dry fish, salt fish. So let's move on. We can talk for food for the next hour, but I just want to try and give you some tidbits of information. We already talked about the wild edible stuff. Self-sustainability in terms of food long term. I'll tell you what I'm doing personally. And you may want to entertain this, maybe you don't. I'm planning on building a micro aquaponics unit, which is basically a self-sustainable ecosystem. What's the word? There's a phrase that goes with it. You've got your fish. Fish have keep in the water, and that goes up into the pump. And the specific pump I'm actually getting for this, it's going to be USB powered, because I've got all sorts of devices, and I can USBs no problem, because of the power it does for that. I can keep the system going for some time, even with my solar panels. Water goes into the top area where there's plants. The plants actually purifies the water, goes back into the system, and there's algae in there as well. Fish eat the algae. Fish poop bad water, purified by the plants, goes back into the system. And it just grows. And then you could grow, tomatoes or something like that. I'm planning on building one and doing a video on it. Another thing entertaining is there's a woman that came up with a system to feed insects. And I know it sounds disgusting, but pound for pound, they're a brilliant source of protein. And what she's got is basically, you could just picture like a small drawer of layers, and you give them a little piece of lettuce, they eat that, and there's a way to sort of shimmy it. I'll send you, but the whole point is they reproduce like mad, and it's self-sustainable in terms of just something you could go in and eat day after day. I don't know if
I like the.
Sorry,
I was going to say I like the idea of insects, simply because like I get the general idea that probably most people think it's disgusting, but those people have obviously never been hungry before. I mean, genuinely, truly
Sure.
hungry.
Yeah.
If you ever have been, I guarantee you that'll be a great tasting meal.
Oh yeah, and I had me and Robert from Survival Central when we did the like the wild meats thing where we did the frog's legs, the mice, the worms. We did I forget what insect it was. Um, I forget. But my home they like sizzled, they popped. They actually tasted fantastic. Tasted really good. Um, how much land do you have? I mean, this is subjective to you. I mean, if you don't want, if it's too much. Have you looked at maybe getting the chicken, throwing that in the sun in front, I mean that produces stable food. This is
Yeah.
self-sustainable long term, right? A bag of feed for chicken for $10 for 6 months. You know, have you considered something like that?
I have where I'm at. I legally couldn't get away with that. There's
Mhm.
local bylaws in place preventing
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Otherwise, I'd love to have chickens here, but
everybody watching this knows that now. So I'm just messing with you.
well, it's up to the person. Like I mean, I've heard stories of people where I'm at that have tried it. If you want to go ahead and deal with the fines, go ahead. However, in reality, I've got the experience. My grandparents they had a farm, it's still up and going. So, as far as the experience of running a farm or taking care of animals, that I know how to do. And if it was that bad where I needed to, I wouldn't be asking about the bylaws. I think that wouldn't be a concern at that point, where I would need to ask permission to have chickens in my property.
Okay,
So,
well, take that situation and apply it in a way that
uh,
hopefully you can benefit from. It really is bylaws, municipal bylaws that grumpy old men in some buildings say no because we have preconceived notions that they're dirty or they're this or they're that. So that's really what it's all about. A
yeah,
lot of people in Toronto, I attended at it was the University of Toronto a couple of years ago. There was a group there doing backyard chickens. They sort of tap dance around the law, saying, look at see no evil, hear no evil sort of mentality. So, and they do. They live in Toronto. It's quite obvious that they have their chickens. It's extremely healthy. I mean, how can you, with your particular situation, how you thinking you could complement that so that, if you needed to get chickens in a SH2F situation or long-term disaster there was a few weeks or whatever that could you store something at your grandparents' place with a local farmer and give them a few bucks to look after the chickens. If something happens, then you've got a food source. Bring it back to your place.
yeah.
So,
That's definitely an option. That's kind of already in place for the most part. Uh,
okay.
and that would also be, I mean, transportation. I mean, I due to my trade, I've definitely got that covered. I certainly hope so, anyway. But that would be a question as to whether or not we would uproot. I mean, that's up in the air, and that's all depends on how bad something. If something were to get bad or that rough, that's kind of one of those things as to whether or not we would uproot.
Uproot
So,
as in bug out.
yeah, so to speak. I would definitely prefer not to, but I'm not. I mean, I'm not foolish enough to stick around. If the rats are leaving the ship, get the hell out, right?
Sure, and the problem with that, I mean, with all due respect, it's nothing personal against you, is I find there's usually one or two reasons why people can't bug out, so to speak, you don't wish to. And it's primarily because they place all their resources in one location, that is where they live. The second,
Exactly.
the second reason is they don't really have an idea of where they should go. So the option to bug out is not a very practical one for most preppers because they have all. I mean, I've got my physical food right here. This isn't the only place I have food. I've got, I'll just say places because it's the notion of bugging out comes back to you. It's a really subjective thing. Like, how do you mean to bug out when such and such app on your phone says, "Oh, disaster! You got a budget?" No, it's really how you feel about it, based on the proximity of the disaster. 5 kilometers away? 50. Is it the severity of the disaster? Is this blackout? Or is this the stage of the disaster? Is it day 1? Day 5? Proximity, stage, nature. And there's a fourth one. There's a fourth one. I always forget it, and I created these 4 things, and I don't remember them, because I was trying to think of a way to categorize how and when to budget, but ultimately the 4th one will come to the same. Proximity, stage, severity, nature. There we go. Proximity, stage, severity, and nature. The nature of the type of disaster. But at the end of the day, it's all you. It's all you. It's where your comfort level is, or your fear, for lack of a better term. I mean, for some people, your neighbor, let's pretend they disrespect this here. There's a viral pandemic 20 kilometers away. They may say, okay, it's go time. We have to go. And you may be like, well, I feel okay here because, local police have knocked on the door. They're okay. I can see on the news the hospital is, they've flown in a team of people. That's one thing. The other component is having a location to go to. So when we think about other locations, we need to think about broadening our resources to other locations. So this is where something like geostashing comes into play. We've got 5-gallon wells, with large quantities of food buried in miscellaneous locations that you could potentially retreat to. Somebody like yourself, I'm pretty confident you know a handful of decent hunting spots. If you're a hunter like me, probably spots that people won't frequently go to. This is something you could do in the fall. Go on your hunting trip, take a few hours, bring a bucket with you, bury it. Put some preservation stuff. Put a bag of salt in there. Because if you do go there, chances are you're going to be hunting, I would think. You got to hang out with your significant other, put another bucket there with some comfort items, chocolates, bottle of vodka. So that would be vodka, Polish vodka. And that way you've got the potential to retreat to other locations. Maybe things are a little bit crazy in the city. You need to just disappear for a while. Some kind of weeping flu is going around, and you need to be away from people, which is another mantra that I have, which is your level to survive, your survival is largely affected by how close the proximity is to desperate people. This is to say that if you, Aaron, are in a survival situation, you're going to have greater chances of surviving when you're away from people that don't know what a predator is, that don't do what you and I do. Why? Because most of them are going to become a liability, irrespective if they're a mechanic, they're a hunter, in the security of the because they may be so frantic that being able to utilize their skills, which you may or may not need at the time, you and your significant other can be perfect at. Having a nurse on standby is great, but that gets into this whole dynamic of having resources for them. You need to spread out your resources, brother. That's advice. It's another piece of advice I'm going to tell you. And I don't want you to get a 5-gallon pail and buy a bunch of food and go to the rooms and bury something small. But you should at least start thinking about it. And it doesn't have to be dangerous stuff. You can get some containers, keep your lamp on charge, talk to your significant other's mother, your mother-in-law. They've got a cottage somewhere. Say, hey, you don't mind if I store a couple things here, right? Or maybe they don't have to know. Just next time you go for a visit at the cottage there, you put something in the boathouse at the back, right? And you put something on the top of it to, and even psychological diversion too. So if they open up the container, they see your stamp collection or something like that initially for the first couple of layers. So resource spreading out is going to be very important, I think.
I like it.
Yeah. So you say you're good on security. Let's talk about health. So
Yeah. Wish I
that's
didn't.
yeah,
Uh,
that's fine. Yeah, it is what it is. What's what sort of health skills do you have now? You had to be a registered dog or something.
yes, I've got the basics. I do know how to do my own stitches.
Cool.
Unfortunately, I've had to learn how to do that. Surgery, anything like that, no. If I had to set a bone, yeah, I can set bones, do splints, tourniquets, stitches. Uh,
Good. That's more than most people. Do you feel that you're lacking in any area, in any specific spot in that area, in the healthcare area?
I'd like to learn a little bit more about medicine and basic off-the-shelf stuff that can be used in a little more practical applications, maybe in ways people don't really know how to
Mhm.
or aren't aware of.
There's two fields I want to branch off to right here while I'm thinking about this. And the first one is the more common stuff that I see, which is the chaffing for insects, sunburn, blisters, some of the minor stuff, insect bites, are enough to take out people. I went on a bug out a couple of years ago with some hardcore guys in the bush. I mean, it took us an hour to go 100 meters because it was so dense here. We had to leave early because one of the guys couldn't handle the bugs. He's a big guy, walking around, 10 pounds of ammo in his SKS. Like he could hold his own. But what took him out was the buzz, the minor medical, quote unquote medical. But ultimately, what that was a psychological defeat, which we'll talk about in a second. So having all the minor stuff is really important in addition to doing stitches. So like that's great. That's great. That's ahead of the game more than most people. Do you have any antibiotics?
Uh, yes and no. Uh, I've got some generic ones.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and actually, I just got out of having a fish tank, so I do have a lot of fish mocks.
Okay.
So I've done the research, and yeah, my actually I do have another benefit, another asset is my significant other is in the healthcare field.
Okay.
So
Brilliant. Excellent.
so that helps. And according to her, yeah, fish mox is pretty much your generic amoxicillin.
Penicillin. Exactly.
Uh,
Insecticide, fish pen, penicillin.
yeah. So that's great to have. I think people need to educate themselves a lot more before they even start buying it.
Oh, sure.
Educate yourself because I mean I can see people getting in really big trouble using that stuff improperly. In fact, I think that could be more dangerous than not using it. Uh,
Okay. Oh, there's
just from what I've
definitely.
seen, what I've heard, it's like anything else. I mean, you have to educate yourself.
That's part of the
So
problem I see with people that have, these kits. I've seen some of these jackasses on YouTube. Here's my bug out bag. They're pulling shit out and it's fucking brand new. They've never used it before. What the fuck is that? You know what I mean? Like, if you're not, and it screams inexperience, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one thing to stockpile fish antibiotics; it's another to understand that certain antibiotics are going to go after specific infection types, throat infection, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where a lot of average preppers fail as well, because with that first aid kit, and I know there's people out there watching this right now, they say, well, I got a first aid kit. Well, do you know how to use everything in that kit? I'm not saying this to sound arrogant or, older than now. I mean, it's the truth. It's the truth. Having an
yeah,
appreciation for the common things that you're going to come across. And having an appreciation when you look at your kit, all the components of that first aid kit. you know where and when and how to apply them correctly.
Yeah.
Correct?
Being able to properly evaluate the situation on whether or not it needs it to begin with, and what the severity level is. Like if you get a tiny little scratch on your arm, whether you're in the middle of the bush or not, you don't want to be start pounding back fish mocks because you're worried about infection.
Sure. Sure. I
Uh,
agree with that.
it's uh, Knowing how to properly dress a wound and keep it clean is just as important as having antibiotics. I'd say that's definitely for sure. Knowing what kind of infection you have, that's important to know. One thing we do have quite a few of, and I've got a couple of big versions of basic medical books. So studying those, it's worth the time. If you don't want to buy the book, then go on the internet. You can find it, and you can usually tell there's some key signs of how inflamed something is, where the inflammation is, different colors, if you're having any kind of secretions from it or pus and stuff like that. There's a whole list you can go down. You can familiarize yourself with on how to treat it, what to do with it, um, and that can be very important. That can help you a lot more than having 10 grand worth of different antibiotics. That, I mean, should you have them? Yeah, definitely if you can. But I wouldn't recommend somebody go out and spending a whole pile of money on antibiotics they don't even know how to use in the first place. All they know is that it has the same thing, and the last part of the name is psyllin.
Yeah, yeah, and that's that what you're saying complements the what I was talking about initially with some people from a security component being ex-military will tend to overemphasize in that one area and maybe neglect turn off their brain. Maybe they got the first aid kits or whatnot, and then they turn off their brain to evolve and to learn more information about that specific topic, that specific area. That's really good, man. That's you're on the right track. Uh, what are your communications like?
4.
Okay.
I'll admit that right off the bat. 4. Uh, I've got access to a CB radio, very close, but not in the house. No two-way radios, nothing like that.
Okay. So,
I
sorry, go ahead, man. Sorry, go.
I've always wanted to get into ham radio. I don't know how helpful that'd be nowadays, but
Why do you think it wouldn't be helpful?
I don't know how many people are actually skilled in using it or even know how to use it, period.
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. What I would recommend you do, a buddy of mine's got a site. If you want to support a fellow Canadian, it's up to you. His name's Denav. It's like pepperradios.ca. And on that site, he's got I don't know if you've got a pen and paper, he's got a specific ham radio called UV5R. The make is a Bale thing. This is a brilliant radio. You can tap into any walkie frequency, it's UHF, VHF. You can get all sorts of accessories, which includes, I think it comes with an 1800 milliamp battery. You can get up to 3800 long life, longer antennas, all sorts of stuff. Here's my point. I'm intending on doing an official presentation with Bale Fans, with ham radios from the start, like the beginning, for beginners. How do you turn this thing on? How do you tap into such and such? Going into the much more advanced stuff and programming that. So somebody like yourself that may be lacking in the communications area, I think you would get a lot of benefit from that. And if you have a radio ahead of time, then you can kind of go through the paces as it's being taught, so to speak. The other advantage with this radio, and we can talk about this in the coming months with the presentation, is the capacity to tap into local frequencies, such as maybe waste management or sanitation management, and municipal frequencies, and even some police, fire department frequencies, emergency service frequencies. There's a site which has a database of all that stuff, including Canada. But you can see your local town's such and such frequency, or the maintenance crew is such and such. So you could potentially program the radio to listen in, which is obviously has some great advantages, I would think, if it's some sort of emergency and you've got a lifeline with respect to having the awareness of what's going on around you. That's for starters. The problem with systems like that is they need to sustain power. Do you have any sort of power regeneration going on where you are? No.
No.
Okay, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just a question. Okay, so that's obviously another area that you have to look into and consider. Power for me, I mean, I think I got a whole video on this. It revolves around communication devices, I mean, things that would need power. Communication devices, like lights. That's probably the number one. It's just lights, just have lights. And the third is access to information long term. You know, I don't want to be carrying around 10,000 books, 10,000 books right here, sort of thing, on every topic imaginable. I'm actually going to do a video on how to hijack iPads and get information. But again, you know, like with the food stuff, I don't think because you're trying to near this, you don't have to go guns blazing and talk to chick. Oh my God! You know, you can take baby steps. I'd recommend picking up the radio in a couple of month or so. But I'm going to do a training presentation. Excuse me. You being Canadian, you're obviously familiar with YouTube. You know, probably wouldn't hurt to get on there now. Not on a blackout, because that's when everybody in the mother wants a generator. Get on there now. And just don't make it mega. Don't. And that's what a lot of people fail. Is they get 6 kilowatt generators. They don't understand they're burning a lot more fuel than idle. Just let everything running. Get yourself a $1,000 generator. Pick one up for $50. Seriously. You know, something just in case. Get some fuel. You're a mechanic. You know, gas eventually goes bad. Add a couple things of gasoline. Rotate your stock every year at the latest. Just have it on standby. You've got a simple little generator. You get off the GG. I break into all the time just because they're nominal barter items, I would think. And with a blackout, what do a lot of people do? They spend, 300 plus, blackouts tax free that the people are charging and buy brand new generators. It's just, like you with the vehicle, the supplies you have for your significant other, it just makes sense to have these sorts of things. We don't have to talk about spending a lot of money necessarily. But, that's why I would start with power is concerned.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'd probably say, battery backups, definitely like to expand on that. We've got lots of batteries, power banks, like USB style ones, source of lighting, every floor of the house we've got, in case of a power outage, we've got little LED lanterns, stuff like that.
Like solar.
But as far as, actually, yes, you have a solar backup too, small one. But nothing on a grand scheme that could power. It'd be nice to have something that could power, say, a microwave, stove, a radio. Actually, I got that covered, but
Okay.
something, something a little more substantial. It doesn't have to power the whole house the way it is now.
No.
Something that I could run. Something that could run a couple appliances.
What do you need appliances for? Why not?
Well, I don't mean appliances. I'm using it as an example. I don't mean necessarily to power an appliance, but the power level that would be able to handle that if need be.
Yeah, I think what your concern would be, especially in your climate, with respect to power, would be more
Heat.
Yeah, would have to be fees, and the risk of your damage to your house with freezing lines or something like that. But if heat is a concern, then you don't have to worry about your food going bad because you can put it in the container and take a chunk of your vehicle. So, which just to run in here, what leads to these next couple of questions. We're going to sum up here shortly in Portugal. I'd like to follow up to portable cooking implements. Do you have like needed to boil water to cook food at in your backyard? Can you do it?
Yes. So pots. I mean, the pots and pans. We do have a fire pit in the backyard. Grates. I think what else. A nice assortment of cast iron cookware.
Cool.
So.
Where do you see your okay? Comms is a big issue. It sounds like you're doing pretty good with health. You tell me you're confident with security. I'm confident you can build a shelter, build a fire, water. I think maybe you need to think a little bit outside the box. I think if you need a clock, you pick up water. You have containers, you have dolly, and that's highly unlikely. I'm thinking more bigger picture long term. Food, we touched on. Where do you want to see yourself be, I guess, in the next 6 years? Where do you want to take this? You're into this. What's next year on your plate that you want to work on? Maybe I can give you some advice
on. Probably the next place I'm going to be working on is the comms. I'm going to check out your buddy there, learn more about that. And as far as power, I've actually been looking into it for the past little while about actually getting a solar bank set up at my house. So we're talking on the roof, possibly a system that feeds back in the system to make money. You never know. At the very least, have a battery bank set up that there's electricity there if and when needed.
Sure, and that's really smart, and it's a bit of a toss-up too, because then you risk becoming potentially targeted if it's visible. I know that you could set up systems and sure put it back into the grid to be right into the grid and okay with it. And then having the alternative chopping the cable and having some batteries ready to deep cycle batteries to charge things is awesome as well. I mean, that in and of itself can take care of a lot of the minor stuff. I think we're talking light, powering up the radios and things like that. I mean, comms isn't just ham radio. Comms it's a huge topic. Maybe I don't know what 160 videos. I haven't even started. This is like with the stuff I want to get into. Communications could be interpersonal when you're dealing with neighbors. And using psychological tactics like rubbing Vaseline under your nose, make it look like you're sick, look like you're suffering. There's all sorts of different ways you can spin comms. But totally, check out that stuff. Like having a ham radio and understanding how to use it is going to be very, very important because while you're sitting in the basement, you're going to want to know what's going on around you. Solar panels, that sounds great, but because you're so new, I would recommend take your time. A, B, enjoy your fucking life. This doesn't have to consume you and it doesn't have to be fear-based. It's very comforting. I'm sure it's very comforting. You gave your significant other a bag, for the vehicle. So, okay, I feel a little bit better. It gives you the peace of mind. The third thing is keep evolving with your skills, keep learning. And the trap that I see a lot of people fall into is they get sucked into YouTube. And when you spend more of your time watching videos as opposed to preps or working on skills out in the bush, then your long term it's not going to be constructive. So we want you to be constructive. We want Aaron to keep on moving forward. Because you're fresh, I wouldn't want to see you overwhelmed with this stuff. So take your time. happen at different areas. I mean, like next Saturday, going to GG, see if we can find a generator for $50. That's the stuff, you know. Have a look at what solar panels cost. Do some or cost. Look at some how the systems work, you know, or even a microsystem. So you get that, you got something you needed. Look at the 60-watt panel, you buy a charge controller. And ironically, I'm actually doing a video producing with a simple charge controller for the phone. It's like $15, which you'll have to watch the whole video on this.
Will do.
To understand how that works and plug that to a car battery. You can have some of those laying around being mechanical. And there's there's a micro power source. Understand the capacity of the battery. I mean, how many watts can get out of it? 600 watts, 800 watts, 1,000 watts, we'll say 800. So if you were to tie in your thing, radio, or connect up an inverter and keep a radio going, how long does it last? Would that be self-saving? 60 watts be enough? You know, for 8 hours of light a day? There's all sorts of little things, I think is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, but it has to be consistent. It has to be passionate. It has to come from a place where you feel good about it. And speaking with you, I think you do feel good about it. You know, like the whole notion. You're not afraid. You're a fucking smart guy that says, well, it makes sense to have some shit in my car. You know, that's gonna help me in case I have to write down. So we didn't. Unfortunately, I gotta take off, brother. From yapping.
Nope. So do I. I gotta get going here pretty quick.
There's other things I wanted to talk about, but we'll follow up via email. I hope this was constructive for you, for your audience. Hope this could give you some insight. And it was fun. It was fun. I had a good time.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. Thanks for the chat, and I hope everyone got a little bit out of something seeing a noob.
Yeah. And this was like totally unexpected too. So for the 8 viewers or 9 viewers that watch this, like, wow, he's live. It must be hardcore fans, right? Yeah. Thanks, sir. It's a pleasure talking. I'll follow up on the email, okay, brother? I appreciate it.
Sounds good. Have a good day.
Okay, cheers. Later.